Infidelity, Shock, and a Revenge Plan. How My Life Turned into a Real-Life Thriller. A typical Thursday morning a few weeks back turned out to be anything but ordinary. Amidst the usual chaos of getting our two kids ready for school, the phone rang loudly at 7:30. An unfamiliar code on the caller ID piqued my curiosity. To my surprise, it was my wife, Emily, on the line. She works for a marketing firm, and her early morning call caught my attention. I take care of our children and work from home, while she's always on the move, working at a printing company in our town center. Despite our different schedules, we've made it work and live comfortably in a cozy suburban house with 4 bedrooms, a swimming pool, and a wide circle of friends. Emily informed me that her purse had been stolen the previous night from a hotel lobby while she was getting a newspaper. She urgently requested that I cancel our credit cards and ask for new ones. She had already notified her boss, Lisa, who would arrange for new American Express cards to be sent overnight and transfer some money to help Emily through this situation. Emily explained that she had been a bit absent-minded and left her purse at the cashier's counter while grabbing more reading material. When she returned, it was gone. The cashier hadn't noticed anything unusual. Her driver's license was in the purse, and the hotel had dispatched staff to check nearby dumpsters. She hoped they would find it. Otherwise, she would have to rely on a taxi for her meeting that day. I assured her that I would handle the credit cards promptly and apologized for her oversight. Apart from about $1,200 in her wallet, we wouldn't face any additional expenses. Most of her makeup was still in the room, so she would be prepared for her morning presentation. She missed the times when we were all together and recounted what had happened 6 weeks ago. I successfully canceled the credit cards before any unauthorized charges were made. However, the wallet containing her driver's license and other non-credit card items was yet to be recovered. Life continued as usual, but I had something important to share. I discovered a statement from Emily's Fidelity account, where she manages a separate investment fund from the inheritance she received after her parents' tragic accident a few years ago. I had always respected her privacy concerning this account, but while searching for our home insurance policy, I stumbled upon a folder containing monthly statements from her personal account. I recalled that the inheritance amounted to around $350,000 following her parents' passing, and I couldn't help but wonder how much it had grown. To my pleasant surprise, it had expanded to over $400,000. While going through the statement, I noticed a withdrawal of $33,000 from the money market account about 6 weeks ago. My curiosity was piqued regarding how she had utilized that money, so I decided to delve deeper into her money market account. To my astonishment, I discovered that she had written a substantial check to a local jewelry store just a couple of days after losing her purse in the same city. I couldn't help but wonder what she had purchased of that jewelry store. She hadn't mentioned buying anything for me, and I hadn't heard her discuss acquiring jewelry for anyone else. After some contemplation, I decided to turn to the computer and visit the jewelry store's website. I jotted down their phone number for further inquiry. I picked up the phone and dialed the jewelry store's number. A woman introduced herself as a store representative and inquired how she could assist me. After providing my name and specifying the transaction I wished to inquire about, I explained that we had encountered an issue with the purchase and were wondering if there was a store warranty in place. She proceeded to search for the transaction in her computer and then inquired about the nature of the problem with the rings. I found myself momentarily puzzled, wondering what kind of rings she could have bought. Fortunately, the woman on the phone swiftly clarified that when Emily visited their store, she was visibly distressed and mentioned that her wedding and engagement rings had been stolen. She wanted to replace them, which proved to be quite a challenging task. While they were searching for suitable options to meet her needs, she used the company's credit card as collateral and later sent them a check to cover the cost. I bid her farewell, leaving her somewhat puzzled, but my own bewilderment was far more overpowering. It was becoming increasingly apparent that the rings should have been inside her purse when it was stolen. But why would she carry them in her purse if she had no intention of concealing her marital status from others? To the best of my knowledge, there were no professional constraints related to revealing one's marital status. However, if she wanted to appear unmarried in specific social circumstances, staying for 2 or 3 nights in distant cities, if she harbored intentions of such actions, she might have seen it as a discreet opportunity. It seemed that losing the rings had deeply troubled her, leading her to opt for replacements that closely resembled the originals. I had purchased those rings with my modest earnings, so they were not extravagant, and crafting near replicas wasn't too costly. She could have reported the loss to the insurance company, but I probably would have found it suspicious. Emily explicitly noted her hesitation to involve the police as I absorbed this information, my thoughts racing, overwhelmed by the implications of what I had uncovered. She had deceived me not only by concealing the truth about the stolen rings, but also by inventing a story about shoplifting. Chapter 2: Secrets and Lies. As I tried to reconcile my thoughts, I considered her schedule for the upcoming trip. I wanted to understand what she typically did in the evenings outside our home. If she was involved with other men, perhaps losing the rings had served as a wake up call, prompting her to reassess her behavior. I knew that if I discovered her infidelity, it would likely spell the end of our marriage. Though I dreaded considering how it might impact our children, she was undoubtedly a great mother. However, I couldn't bear the thought of her having a child with someone else. Rendering pregnancy impossible, she couldn't rely on the men she met having protection, so she must have had her own supply. One question remained: where did she keep them? It was unlikely she stored them in our house or in the car, so the office seemed the most likely place. She probably carried her work papers, laptop, and presentation materials in a large briefcase she kept in her office. If she had an early morning flight, she would probably have brought it home. The specter of her infidelity continued to linger in the back of my mind. When Emily returned from work, I found myself in a bit of a mess. While preparing dinner, I accidentally spilled a dish of beans, creating a mess on the floor. The resulting chaos of cleaning up and managing the kids' activities left me looking somewhat disheveled. Fortunately, she didn't seem to notice any unusual behavior from me at that moment. After the commotion settled and everything was cleaned up, I greeted her with a kiss. I knew she had been working hard, so I was genuinely interested in her day. Emily mentioned her desire to gain more experience before transitioning to a desk job. However, I gently appealed to her conscience regarding the kids. I really miss you when you're not home, I added, hoping to evoke a sense of guilt. I know, she responded sympathetically. I miss all of you too. Seeking more details, I continued, so where exactly are you going? Just Denton, she mentioned. I'll be leaving tomorrow morning at 7:30. I need something to keep me going until I return on Friday, she added playfully, giving me a wink. I responded similarly, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. To my surprise, she blushed in response. Her comment about bringing her briefcase home the night before her trip suggested excitement. She appeared visibly excited, leaving me wondering if her excitement was due to our conversation or if there was another reason behind it. Upon entering the house, she didn't bring her briefcase with her. Assuming it was still in the car, I was busy preparing dinner, so we sat down at the table. She casually asked if I could retrieve her suitcase from the garage after we finished eating. Certainly, I replied, trying not to show any signs of suspicion. After dinner, she kindly helped me clear the table in the kitchen and loaded the dishwasher. Once we were done, she headed to the bedroom to pack her things while I made my way to the garage to retrieve her suitcase. Upon inspecting the car, I didn't find a briefcase inside, leading me to believe it was securely placed in the trunk. Expecting this, I had already devised a plan to access it later in the evening. When I returned to the bedroom with her suitcase, I casually asked, "Do you know where your briefcase is?" Before she could change her mind. Swiftly, I drove her car out of the garage and headed to the junction station, owned by my friend Jerry from school. Pulling up in front of one of the service bays, I honked my horn to get his attention. Jerry noticed me and opened the bay door, allowing me to drive in before closing it behind me. "What's going on, buddy?" Jerry asked curiously. "My tire was supposed to be fixed here, but I needed a little time to check something else," I replied, sensing that I might need his help. To my shock, I discovered a package that drew my attention. When I removed it, my heart sank as I realized it was an open package of contraceptives, with about 3 pieces missing. My worst fears were confirmed. I carefully placed the pack back where I found it and closed the briefcase once more, stashing it in the trunk and securing it tightly. My mind raced as I considered the implications of what I had just discovered. Contraceptives. This wasn't just an innocent purchase. It pointed to something far more sinister. The fear that my marriage was built on a foundation of lies began to gnaw at me. When I returned home, my heart felt heavy. I took a deep breath to steady myself, reminding myself of the children. I didn't want them to feel the tension that simmered beneath the surface. I walked into the living room, where Emily was sitting with the kids, helping them with their homework. The sight of their innocent laughter struck a painful contrast to the turmoil in my mind. "Hey, how was your day?" Emily asked, looking up with a warm smile. I forced a smile in return, but inside, I was churning. I needed to confront her, but how? I didn't want to accuse her outright. I wanted to gather more evidence, to understand her motivations, to understand the depth of her betrayal. After the kids went to bed, I decided it was time to bring up the topic of her upcoming trip. I had to be careful. I didn't want to raise suspicion. So, are you all packed and ready for Denton tomorrow? I asked casually. Almost. I just need to finish a few things, she replied, her voice cheerful and carefree. I'll be back Friday evening. Are you excited? I pressed on, trying to gauge her reaction. Yeah, it'll be nice to get away for a bit, she said, not looking me in the eyes. I sensed a flicker of something. Was it guilt? I couldn't be sure, but I decided to push a little further. What do you have planned for your meetings? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Just the usual presentations and networking. I'll have dinner with some clients on Thursday night, and then Friday is all about follow-ups and closing deals, she explained. As she spoke, her phone chimed with a notification. She glanced at it quickly, a flash of worry crossing her face before she regained her composure. I watched her closely, my heart pounding. I decided to take a risk. I hope you won't be too busy to call me, I said lightly, but the weight of my words lingered in the air. Of course not, she said quickly. I'll call when I can. I miss you and the kids when I'm gone. As I leaned back in my chair, I struggled to maintain my composure. I felt like a detective in a bad movie, trying to decipher clues from the most innocent of conversations. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that her behavior had changed over the past few months. Was it just stress from work, or was it something more? Once she headed to bed, I found myself unable to sleep. I laid in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through the possibilities. What if she was having an affair? Who was this man? Why was she hiding things from me? I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I thought about the past, our wedding day, the promises we made to each other. It felt like a cruel joke now, as if those moments were nothing more than mirage. I knew I had to dig deeper to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The next morning, as Emily prepared for her trip, I made a decision. I would follow her. I had to know where she was going and who she was meeting. I couldn't let my imagination run wild any longer. After she left for the airport, I grabbed my phone and did a quick search on her itinerary. I found out that she had booked a hotel near the convention center in Denton. As I packed a bag, my heart raced with adrenaline. I would follow her. I had to see for myself what was really going on. Chapter 3. On the road. Driving toward Denton, I felt a mix of dread and determination. The highway stretched endlessly before me, but the closer I got to my destination, the more I could feel the weight of the decision I had made. I wasn't sure what I would do once I arrived, but I knew I had to confront the truth, whatever it might be. As I pulled into the hotel parking lot, my pulse quickened. I parked a discreet distance away, observing the entrance for a few moments. The lobby was bustling with business travelers and conference attendees. I knew Emily would be among them shortly, and my heart raced at the thought of seeing her in that context, out of my reach and perhaps with someone else. I decided to check into a nearby motel, just in case I needed a place to stay. It was a cheap place, but it offered me a strategic position to keep an eye on Emily. After dropping off my bags, I made my way back to the hotel where she was staying. I entered the lobby casually, pretending to be another guest. I watched as people milled about, and my gaze scanned the crowd for any sign of her. Minutes felt like hours as I anxiously waited. Finally, I spotted her. She walked in, dressed in a sharp business suit, her hair neatly pinned back. She exuded confidence, and I couldn't help but admire her from afar, even as suspicion churned in my gut. Emily checked in at the front desk and received her keycard. I followed at a distance, careful not to draw her attention. I watched as she headed toward the elevators, and I knew I had to act quickly. As the doors closed behind her, I made my way toward the stairwell, choosing to take the stairs up to her floor. Once I reached the third floor, I waited in the hallway, my heart pounding as I listened for any signs of her. A few moments later, I spotted her door slightly ajar. I could hear her voice, and it sent a chill down my spine. She was talking to someone, her tone warm and inviting. I couldn't make out the words, but the laughter that followed was unmistakable. I leaned closer, heart racing, desperately trying to catch snippets of the conversation. "It's so good to see you," I heard her say, and the voice of a man responded. "Glad you made it," he replied, his tone smooth and familiar. I couldn't take it any longer. I had to know who this man was. I stealthily crept toward the door, peeking through the small crack. My stomach dropped as I caught sight of them sitting together on the bed. Emily and a tall man with dark hair, casually dressed, looking far too comfortable. They shared a bottle of wine, and the atmosphere between them felt intimate, like they were old friends. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. She had been lying to me all along. I stood frozen, watching the scene unfold. Emily laughed again, and the man leaned in closer, whispering something that made her blush. My fists clenched as anger surged through me, mixing with disbelief. How could she betray our family like this? Before I could process my thoughts, I took a step back, my heart racing, and slammed into the wall. The sound echoed in the empty hallway. Panic shot through me as I realized they might have heard me. I quickly retreated to the stairwell, my breath coming in short gasps. I stood there, heart pounding, trying to gather my thoughts. I needed to confront her, but I also knew that confronting her in that moment could escalate things beyond control. I decided to wait until she returned home, to gather more evidence, to have my story straight before I confronted her about the affair. Chapter 4: The Confrontation. The drive back home felt like an eternity. I was filled with a swirling mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. How could she do this to us? To our children? My mind replayed the scene from the hotel room over and over again. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, a justification for her actions, but the truth was hard to swallow. When I walked through the door, the house felt different. The children were still at school, and I was alone in the silence. I sat down in the living room, trying to calm my racing thoughts. I knew I had to confront Emily, but I also had to choose my words carefully. I didn't want the children to hear our argument, and I wanted to approach the conversation with a level head. Finally, the time came. Emily returned home that evening, her face lighting up as she entered. "I'm back," she called out, her voice cheerful. But I wasn't ready to match her enthusiasm. "Hey," I replied, my tone flat. She walked over, expecting a kiss, but I stepped back, creating distance. Her smile faltered as she sensed something was off. "What's wrong?" she asked, her eyes narrowing with concern. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but firm. She glanced at the clock, sensing the seriousness in my tone. "Can't this wait until after dinner?" "No," I said, feeling the weight of the moment. "It can't wait." She hesitated, the warmth in her demeanor fading. I motioned for her to sit down. "What's going on?" "You're scaring me," she said, her voice shaky. "Emily, I know about the trip," I began, keeping my tone measured. "I know about the man you were with." Her expression shifted from confusion to fear, and I could see the panic flickering in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. "I followed you," I confessed, unable to hide the hurt in my voice. "I saw you with him, in your hotel room." Her face paled, and she opened her mouth to protest, but I raised my hand to silence her. "Don't lie to me. I need the truth." Tears filled her eyes, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of compassion. "It's not what you think," she pleaded. "I was just meeting a client. We were discussing business." "Business?" I echoed incredulously. "Is that what you call it? Sharing a bottle of wine on the bed." "Please just listen," she said, her voice breaking. "I was upset about the purse, and he's just a friend. We've worked together for years. It's not what it looks like." "Then what was with the contraceptives?" I pressed, my heart aching with every word. "I bought those for my health," she exclaimed, but I could see the cracks in her facade. "I swear." I shook my head in disbelief. "Emily, I saw the way you were with him. You can't deny it." She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was just so lost after everything with my parents, and I thought. "Thought what?" "That it was okay to betray your family." I interrupted, my voice rising. "You could have talked to me, Emily. We could have worked through it together." "I was scared," she admitted, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could handle it on my own." A painful silence stretched between us, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. My heart was torn. I wanted to understand, to forgive, but the betrayal felt like a chasm between us that was impossible to bridge. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, her silence screaming louder than any words she could muster. The answer was written all over her face. Chapter 5: A Broken Trust. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Emily and I barely spoke, the tension between us palpable. We went through the motions of our daily lives, but everything felt strained. The children remained blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing beneath the surface, and I was grateful for that small mercy. Every evening, I replayed the confrontation in my mind. I wanted to believe Emily when she said it was just a moment of weakness, a slip in judgment, but the trust that had once defined our marriage felt irrevocably shattered. I started to question everything: the small signs I had overlooked, the late nights at work, the seemingly innocent friendships. How much of it had been genuine and how much had been a facade? In the midst of my inner turmoil, I decided to reach out to my best friend, Mark. He had always been a good listener, and I needed someone to confide in. We met at a local bar, the kind that felt familiar and comforting amidst my chaos. "What's going on, man?" Mark asked as we settled into a booth. I took a deep breath, the words caught in my throat. "It's Emily," I finally admitted. "I think she's cheating on me." Mark's expression shifted from casual to concerned. "What do you mean?" I recounted everything: the stolen purse, the withdrawal, the trip to Denton, the confrontation. I saw the concern etch itself into his features as I laid bare the crumbling pieces of my marriage. "I don't know what to do," I confessed, feeling the weight of my vulnerability. "I feel lost." Mark leaned back in his seat, contemplating my words. "Have you thought about couples counseling? Maybe there's still a chance to work things out." I shook my head. I don't even know if I can trust her anymore. How do I rebuild something that feels so broken? "You have to decide if you're willing to try," he replied gently. "Sometimes people make mistakes. If she's willing to be honest with you and put in the effort to change, it might be worth considering." I nodded, feeling the truth in his words. But the pain of betrayal still stung, making it difficult to envision a future together. When I returned home that evening, Emily was waiting for me. She looked weary, her eyes red from crying. "Can't we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Sure," I replied, steeling myself for another round of hard conversations. "I've been thinking about what you said," she started, her voice trembling. "I want to make things right. I love you, and I'm so sorry for what I did." The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. Part of me wanted to believe her, to grasp onto the hope that we could salvage our relationship. But the pain of her betrayal was still fresh, and I wasn't sure I could just sweep it under the rug. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Emily," I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. "It hurts too much." "I understand," she said softly, "but I want to try. I want to be better for you and the kids. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm committed to our family." "Then we should consider counseling," I suggested cautiously. "I think we need help navigating this." Emily nodded, her eyes brightening with hope. "Yes, I'd be open to that. I'll do anything to fix this." As the days turned into weeks, we embarked on a difficult journey of rebuilding. We attended therapy sessions together, opened up about our feelings, and faced the harsh realities of our situation. I found myself caught in a constant battle between love and betrayal. Some days I felt hopeful, while others, the anger threatened to engulf me. Our sessions with the therapist forced us to confront the core issues in our relationship: communication, trust, and vulnerability. It was challenging, and there were moments when I wanted to walk away. But through it all, I saw glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, and those moments kept me tethered to the possibility of redemption. One evening, after a particularly intense session, we sat on the couch together, exhausted but closer than we had been in weeks. "I'm proud of us," Emily said softly. "I know this isn't easy, but we're making progress." I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. "Yeah, we are, but it's going to take time." "I'm willing to put in the effort," she assured me, taking my hand in hers. "I love you, and I'm committed to making this work." As we sat together, a part of me felt that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. But the road ahead was still fraught with challenges, and I knew that we had to navigate them carefully. Trust could be rebuilt, but it would take time and patience, and I had to remain vigilant. Chapter 6: Healing Together. As the weeks rolled on, we immersed ourselves in therapy, focusing on healing both individually and as a couple. It was a slow process, and the scars of betrayal lingered, but we were both committed to understanding the roots of our issues. Emily was more open about her feelings, sharing her struggles and insecurities, while I learned to express my vulnerabilities and fears. Our therapist, Dr. Lacey, emphasized the importance of rebuilding trust through honesty and transparency. She encouraged us to share our thoughts daily, no matter how trivial they seemed. Emily and I began implementing a nightly ritual of sharing our highs and lows from the day, a practice that not only brought us closer, but also helped us understand each other's perspectives. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I noticed how Emily had started to relax in my presence again. She seemed more at ease, laughing at my silly jokes and genuinely enjoying our time together. I couldn't deny that I felt the tension beginning to ease, even if it was just a little. Remember when we used to watch movies together every Friday night? She asked, her eyes sparkling with nostalgia. Yeah, I smiled, recalling our movie marathons. Those were good times. Let's start that again, she suggested, her excitement palpable. We can make popcorn and pick out some classic films. It'll be just like old times. I hesitated for a moment, the memories both sweet and bittersweet, but I nodded in agreement. Okay, let's do it. That Friday, we set up a mini movie theater in our living room. We picked a selection of our favorite films, and for the first time in months, laughter filled the air. The children joined us for the first film, and their giggles brought warmth to my heart. As the credits rolled on the last movie, I felt a sense of connection growing between us. We had shared laughter and vulnerability, and it felt like we were beginning to heal. The next week, Emily suggested we go on a family outing to the zoo. It felt like a big step toward normalcy, and I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. We packed a picnic and set out, our hearts lightening with each passing moment. At the zoo, the kids were captivated by the animals, and I found joy in their laughter. I watched Emily interact with them, her genuine love shining through. It reminded me of the woman I fell in love with, the woman who had been buried under layers of stress and insecurity. As we sat together on a bench, watching our children point excitedly at a lion, I turned to Emily. I know we have a long way to go, but I can see you're trying. It means a lot to me. She smiled, her eyes glistening with gratitude. I'm grateful for this chance to rebuild. I've realized how much I took for granted, and I won't make that mistake again. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope, hope that we could emerge from this stronger than before. But just as I began to envision a future together, I was reminded that the journey ahead was still fraught with challenges, and the shadows of our past could resurface at any moment. Chapter 7. Unraveling Threads. Just as I began to feel comfortable with the progress we were making, a phone call shattered the fragile peace we had been building. It was a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, a familiar voice sent chills down my spine. Hey, it's me. The voice said casually. It was Jake, the man I had seen with Emily and Denton. Panic surged through me, and my heart raced as I gripped the phone tighter. What do you want? I managed to ask, my voice low and tense. Just checking in on Emily. She mentioned she was going through a rough patch, he said, feigning concern. I thought I'd see how she was doing. I could feel the anger boiling within me. You don't need to check in on my wife. You have no right to be involved in our lives. Look, man, it was just a moment of weakness. She told me everything, and I'm genuinely sorry for what happened. I didn't mean to complicate things, he replied, and I could hear the edge in his voice. Complicate things? You destroyed my marriage. I shouted, my patience wearing thin. Easy there. I'm not the enemy. She's the one who chose to step outside the marriage, Jake said, his tone laced with arrogance. But she wants to make it work with you. She told me that herself. I hummed up, feeling rage and betrayal welling up inside me once more. I stormed into the living room, where Emily sat with the kids, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing within me. I felt the need to confront her, but I also knew that I had to remain composed for the children's sake. Emily, can we talk? I asked, my voice strained. She glanced up, concern etching her features. Sure. What's wrong? I led her into the kitchen, away from the kids. I just got off the phone with Jake. Her face paled, and I could see the fear in her eyes. What did he want? He was checking in on you, I replied, my voice low but firm. He seems to think he has a right to be in your life. God, I can't believe he called you, Emily exclaimed, her voice a mix of frustration and embarrassment. I told him I didn't want to talk to him anymore. Did you? I challenged, unable to hide the anger creeping into my tone. Because it doesn't sound like that's what he heard. She looked down, shame flooding her features. I never wanted him to call you. I wanted to cut ties completely. Then why did you allow him to be a part of your life at all? I pressed, feeling the betrayal rise within me again. You don't get to have it both ways. I made a mistake, okay, she said, her voice rising. But I'm trying to fix it. I don't want him in my life anymore. I want you and our family. I took a deep breath, my anger and hurt swirling together. I need to know you're being honest with me, Emily. I can't do this if you're still holding on to the past. I swear I'm not. I want to focus on us and our family, she pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. I love you and I'm committed to making this work. Please believe me. In that moment, I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but the shadows of doubt lingered in my mind. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, balancing the need for trust with the fear of betrayal. I want to believe you, I said finally, my voice softening. But it's going to take time. Emily nodded, her expression a mixture of relief and sadness. I understand. I'll do everything I can to earn your trust back. As we returned to the living room, the weight of our conversation hung in the air. I knew we had a long road ahead, but I hoped that together we could navigate the complexities of our marriage and emerge stronger on the other side. Chapter 8. The Truth Uncovered. As the weeks passed, Emily and I continued our therapy sessions, focusing on rebuilding our relationship. But even as we worked to reconnect, my thoughts remained clouded with doubt. Jake's call lingered in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. Determined to find out the truth, I took matters into my own hands. I began to dig deeper, looking into Emily's phone records and social media accounts. I felt a pang of guilt as I searched for signs of infidelity, but I justified it by telling myself I needed answers. One afternoon, while Emily was out running errands, I found her phone left unattended on the kitchen counter. My heart raced as I debated whether or not to look. I knew it was an invasion of her privacy, but the urge to uncover the truth was too strong. With shaking hands, I picked up her phone and opened her messages. There were a few casual texts from friends, but then I stumbled upon a conversation that made my stomach drop. It was a string of messages between Emily and Jake, their exchanges filled with flirtation and innuendo. They discussed meeting up again, with Emily claiming she was just trying to maintain a friendship. My blood ran cold as I read her words. I can't help but miss our conversations. You always make me feel alive. The betrayal felt like a knife to the gut, twisting deeper with each message I read. I couldn't believe she had been stringing him along while claiming she wanted to repair our marriage. I dropped the phone as if it were burning my hands, the weight of my discovery crashing over me like a wave. When Emily returned home, I confronted her immediately. We need to talk, I said, my voice barely concealing my rage. She looked taken aback, her brow furrowing in confusion. What's wrong? I found your messages with Jake, I said, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. You told me you were done with him, but it's clear you've been lying. Her expression shifted from confusion to fear. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Emily. I saw the messages. I snapped, my anger boiling over. You've been flirting with him, telling him you miss him. I was just trying to be friendly. I didn't mean anything by it, she protested, her voice shaking. Friendly? It sounds like you're still emotionally attached to him, I said, my heart pounding. How can I trust you when you keep lying? Tears filled her eyes, and she looked genuinely distraught. I'm so sorry. I didn't think it would go that far. I just wanted someone to talk to when things were hard between us. I shook my head in disbelief. You don't get to justify your actions like that. You can't keep pretending this is just about friendship. I was lost, okay, she said, her voice breaking. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I see now that I messed up. I want to make things right with you, I promise. Promises don't mean anything if you can't keep them, I said, feeling the weight of despair settling over me. I know, she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. I want to fix this. I'll cut ties with him for good, I swear. I don't know if that's enough, I said, my heart aching. I need to know that you're serious about our marriage. Emily looked at me, desperation etched on her face. I'll do whatever it takes to prove it to you. Please give me another chance. I felt torn, battling between my love for her and the hurt she had caused. I wanted to believe her, but the trust was fragile, and I wasn't sure how to rebuild it again. Chapter 9. A Crossroad. After that confrontation, I took a step back to gather my thoughts. The tension between us grew thicker, and I spent sleepless nights tossing and turning, questioning everything about our relationship. Emily continued to apologize, pledging to cut ties with Jake, but I couldn't shake the lingering doubts. I found myself constantly checking my phone, anticipating another call or message that could shatter what little trust we had left. In a moment of desperation, I reached out to Mark again, hoping for clarity. We met up for coffee, and I poured out my heart, recounting everything that had happened since my last visit. It feels like I'm stuck in this never-ending cycle of doubt, I admitted, feeling the weight of the burden I was carrying. I don't know if I can ever truly forgive her. Mark listened patiently, sipping his coffee while I vented. You have to ask yourself if you see a future with her, he said finally. Is there enough love left to fight for? I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Part of me wants to believe in the possibility of healing, but the other part is terrified of being hurt again. That's completely normal, he replied gently. You're not just dealing with your feelings. You're also navigating the uncertainty of her loyalty. Trust is hard to rebuild, and it takes time. I just wish I knew if she was being honest with me this time. I confessed, my heart heavy. Have you considered setting boundaries? Making it clear what you need to feel safe in the relationship? Mark suggested. I nodded thoughtfully. That might be a good idea. I need to be honest about my feelings and what I expect moving forward. As we wrapped up our conversation, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I returned home determined to have a candid discussion with Emily, to lay everything out on the table. That evening, I sat her down, my heart racing. Emily, we need to have a serious talk about where we're heading. Her expression turned serious as she nodded. I'm ready. I want to be open with you. I took a deep breath. I can't keep living in this limbo of doubt. I need to know you're committed to rebuilding our trust. It's not just about cutting off Jake, it's about being fully transparent with me. She nodded, her eyes earnest. I understand. I'll be completely honest with you moving forward. I want to prove that I can be trusted. Good, I said, feeling a flicker of hope. We also need to set some boundaries. I want to know that I'm your priority, not just when it's convenient for you. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, she replied, her voice steady. I don't want to lose you. I'll make sure to prioritize our family and our relationship. As we continued to talk, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe we could rebuild what had been broken, but it was clear we had a long road ahead, filled with challenges and hard conversations. Chapter 10. The Road Ahead. With our newfound resolve, Emily and I navigated the rocky path of rebuilding our marriage. We continued therapy, focusing on our individual struggles while also strengthening our bond. Emily was more transparent, sharing her feelings and insecurities without hesitation. I found comfort in her vulnerability, and gradually, I began to let my guard down. The shadows of doubt didn't disappear entirely, but they became less overwhelming as we learned to communicate openly. One evening, as we sat on the couch, I turned to her. I know we're not out of the woods yet, but I'm proud of how far we've come. She smiled, a warmth spreading across her face. Me too. It hasn't been easy, but I feel like we're slowly finding our way back to each other. We discussed our future, what we wanted for our family, our dreams, and our hopes. It felt liberating to talk openly about our desires without the weight of past betrayals looming over us. Can we plan a family vacation? I suggested, wanting to create new memories together. Something to look forward to. I'd love that, Emily said, her eyes sparkling. We can go somewhere we've never been. It'll be a fresh start for us. We spent the next few weeks planning our trip, researching destinations and activities. It felt good to have something positive to focus on amidst the chaos. As the days turned into weeks, I noticed a shift in our family dynamic. The kids seemed happier, and there was a newfound energy in our home. Emily and I worked together as a team, helping each other navigate the complexities of parenting while also nurturing our relationship. But just as things began to feel stable, I received another phone call, this time from the school principal. My heart sank as I answered the call, already dreading the news. Mr. Hartman, I'm afraid there's been an incident involving your daughter, the principal said, his tone serious. I'd like you to come to the school as soon as possible. Panic surged through me, and I exchanged worried glances with Emily, who had entered the room just in time to hear the conversation. What happened? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, I replied, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. But we need to go to the school right now. As we rushed to the car, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. My heart raced as I thought of the worst-case scenarios. When we arrived at the school, the principal led us to his office, where our daughter sat, tears streaming down her face. My heart broke at the sight of her distress. What happened? I asked, kneeling beside her. She looked up, her voice shaky. I got in a fight with another girl. She said something mean about Mom, and I lost it. Emily knelt beside her, wrapping her arms around her tightly. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have to deal with this. The principal cleared his throat, his expression serious. While I understand the emotions involved, fighting is never the answer. I'll need to speak with both girls and their parents before we determine the consequences. As we left the principal's office, I felt a mix of pride and concern for my daughter. I wanted to reassure her, but I also needed to address the underlying issue that had caused her to lash out. Hey, it's okay to be upset, I said gently, holding her hand. But fighting isn't the solution. We need to talk about how to handle these situations differently. Emily nodded, her voice steady. You can always come to us if someone says something hurtful. We'll help you work through it, I promise. As we walked to the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that this incident was a wake-up call. The challenges we faced as a family were far from over, but together, we could navigate them. Chapter 11. Finding strength in unity. The school incident sparked deeper conversations within our family. We spent the following weeks discussing emotions, resilience, and how to handle conflicts without resorting to violence. I was proud of my daughter for standing up for her mother, but I also wanted to teach her healthier ways to cope with her feelings. One evening, we gathered around the dinner table, a new tradition we have started to strengthen our bond. As we shared our days, I noticed how much more connected we have become. The atmosphere felt lighter, filled with laughter and love. Dad, can we have a family game night soon? My son asked, his eyes bright with excitement. Absolutely. I replied, glancing at Emily. How about Friday? We can order pizza and have some fun together. Emily smiled, her heart warming at the idea. That sounds perfect. Let's make it a weekly thing. As we planned our first game night, I felt a renewed sense of hope for our family. We were working together to create a supportive environment where each member felt heard and valued. On game night, we laughed and cheered, the tension that once hung over us replaced by joy and camaraderie. Emily and I exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement of the progress we had made. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same team again. But just as things began to feel stable, I found myself grappling with the past. The memories of betrayal still haunted me, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had truly forgiven Emily. One night, as I lay in bed beside her, I turned to her and said, Emily, do you ever think about what happened? About how it affected us? She sighed, turning to face me. All the time. It's a weight I carry every day. I regret it deeply, and I wish I could take it back. I just need to know that you're committed to us, no matter what, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I am, more than ever, she said, her eyes earnest. I want to be the partner you deserve, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I nodded, feeling a mix of hope and uncertainty. It was a long journey ahead, but I believed we could navigate it together. Chapter 12. An unexpected visitor. Just as we began to feel comfortable in our routine, an unexpected visitor knocked on our door one evening. I opened it to find Jake standing on our porch, a look of determination on his face. Jake, what are you doing here? I asked, feeling a surge of anger. I need to talk to Emily, he said firmly. I stepped aside, unwilling to allow him in without consulting her first. Emily, there's someone here to see you. She walked to the door, surprise flashing across her face when she saw Jake. What are you doing here? She demanded, her voice shaky. I wanted to explain myself, he said, his tone earnest. I know things got out of hand, and I wanted to make it right. Emily shook her head. You don't get to come here after everything. You hurt me and you hurt my family. I know and I regret it, he replied, raising his hands in a placating gesture. But I wanted to apologize. I never meant for things to go this far. I stepped forward, my patience wearing thin. You've already done enough damage, Jake. You need to leave. Wait, Emily said, her voice hesitant. I think we should hear him out. No, Emily, I said, my anger boiling over. This is not the time. I want to understand why he feels the need to come here, she insisted, her eyes pleading with me to let her speak. Fine, I said, my voice low with anger. But I'm not going to stand here and let him manipulate you again. Emily turned to Jake, her expression serious. What do you want to say? He took a deep breath, his demeanor softening. I realize now how wrong I was to come between you two. I was selfish and caught up in my own feelings, and I never meant to hurt you or your family. Emily crossed her arms, her posture defensive. You don't get to play the victim here. You made choices that affected our lives. I know, he said, his voice steady, but I'm truly sorry for everything. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I just want to apologize for how I acted. Apology accepted, Emily said coldly. But it doesn't change what happened. Jake nodded, the weight of his actions evident in his eyes. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I've backed off completely. I won't bother you again. Good, I said, my anger simmering. You need to stay out of our lives for good. As Jake left, Emily turned to me, her expression conflicted. Do you think he meant it? I don't care if he did or not, I replied, my frustration spilling over. What matters is that you and I are working on rebuilding our marriage. We don't need him back in our lives. I know, she said softly, her eyes filled with regret. But I wish things had been different. Me too, I admitted, my heart heavy. But we can't change the past. We can only focus on our future. Chapter 13. Healing and Growth. In the weeks following Jake's visit, I noticed a shift in our family dynamic. Emily and I grew closer, navigating our healing journey together. We continued attending therapy, working to address our issues and prioritize our relationship. As the holidays approached, we decided to take a family trip to the mountains. We needed a break from the chaos and a chance to create new memories. The excitement of planning the trip brought us closer, and for the first time in a while, I felt genuine happiness. The trip was a refreshing escape from our routine. We hiked through beautiful trails, enjoyed warm fireside evenings, and shared laughter over games and hot cocoa. I could see the joy on our children's faces, and it warmed my heart. One night, as we sat around the fire, I turned to Emily. I'm really grateful for this time together. It feels like we're finally moving forward. She smiled, her eyes shining. Me too. I feel like we're reconnecting in a way I never thought was possible. As we talked, I shared my hopes for our future. I want us to keep growing, both as individuals and as a family. I want us to prioritize open communication and honesty. I agree, Emily said, her voice steady. I want us to build a strong foundation for our family, one built on trust and love. As we discussed our dreams and aspirations, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We were committed to making our relationship work, and together, we could overcome any obstacle. Chapter 14. A New Beginning. As the new year approached, I felt a sense of optimism for what lay ahead. Emily and I had made significant progress, and our family had grown closer through shared experiences. One evening, as we sat on the couch reflecting on our journey, I looked at Emily, her face illuminated by the soft glow of a lamp. I know we've had our struggles, but I truly believe we're stronger for it. She nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. I never want to go through that again, but I'm grateful for the lessons we've learned. It's made us appreciate each other more. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. I'm committed to being the partner you deserve. I want us to focus on our love and our family. As we shared our hopes for the future, I couldn't help but feel excited for what lay ahead. We had weathered the storm, and now it was time to embrace a new beginning. But just as we began to feel secure, I received a message that would change everything once more. It was from an unknown number, and my heart raced as I opened it. Hey, it's me. We need to talk about Emily. The familiar voice sent shivers down my spine. It was Jake, and my gut twisted with unease. The past was not done with us yet, and I had a feeling this was just the beginning of another challenging chapter in our lives.